artificial intelligence is developing so quickly that even the optimists are failing to see how close we are to being totally replaced by AI and robots in every single job. I don't blame them. This is a technology that is improving and increasing exponentially. And like Ray Kurzweil said when talking about the Human Genome Project, even though they had only mapped 1% of the human genome within the first 7 years of the project, by another 7 years, it would be completely done. That's how these exponential technologies, these exponential areas of advancement progress rapidly, unexpectedly. You sound insane if you're actually tracking the kind of developments that we are going to see. That's why I don't blame beloved YouTube creator Dave Shapiro here for completely missing the mark when it comes to how rapidly AI and robots are going to replace all human labor, not just what he calls keyboard, vision, mouse jobs, but also manual labor jobs. This is going to be a reaction video to his Why We Need a Billion Robots video. Let's go.
Unfortunately, it's going to take a lot longer for robotic automation to take over the skilled labor and manual labor section of the economy than we probably want. Now, please don't shoot the messenger. I'm not happy with these numbers either.
Why does he say then we probably want? Well, because we all should want to get to a post-work future. If you are not excited about what the world is going to look like once we have AI doing the vast majority of jobs, let me just paint a picture for you. Imagine waking up and every day is the best summer vacation of your life. Imagine waking up and not needing to worry about what you are going to do for food, for shelter, for clothing, for entertainment, because you have an artificial intelligence that is tuned to your preferences. And that AI is constantly trying to figure out how to engage you more with reality, how to draw you more out of yourself, how to create media that you like, how to create products that improve your well-being. This is the AI future that we are potentially moving into. I think that is a vision that Dave and I share directly. And if you don't, you'll have to go to another video to see why I think that that's coming. We have too much here to cover.
So let's get right into it. TLDR, we're probably going to see a kind of an annihilation of knowledge work as we know it today by around 2030. So the desk jobs go first, and that's primarily because of computer using agents, which basically follows what I call the KVM principle, which is keyboard, video, mouse. By 2030, we're going to hit a point of cognitive saturation or benchmark plateaus. Basically, all benchmarks will be saturated by 2030. Many of them already are, but even some of the newer benchmarks are probably going to be saturated. That means physics, math, biology, and everything else will be fully saturated by 2030. And then at the same time, we're going to have had a full cycle to deploy all those computer using agents. Now, 2030 is also about 7 years after ChatGPT took off, which is usually when corporate adoption also starts to saturate.
When he talks about benchmarks there, just keep in mind, one of the benchmarks we are tracking against is AI being able to improve itself. We have seen explosions in capability already when it comes to tasks like protein folding, when it comes to tasks like material discovery, when it comes to tasks like drug target discovery. AI has already expanded the scope of what humans were able to do by sometimes millions of fold. So imagine if what he's saying is true there, and I think he's even being a little pessimistic when it comes to 2030. I think we are just as likely to see these benchmarks be saturated by 2027, also in line with Ray Kurzweil's initially crazy sounding prediction that we would have these AGI capabilities by, I think he says a little bit longer, 2045, but that humans would be surpassed by AI by 2027 in terms of computational ability by these models anyway. But when we're talking about these benchmarks, we are talking about recursive self-improvement. That is my own personal definition for artificial general intelligence, because at the point where AI can become recursively self-improving, where AI can make itself smarter, then it's going to start operating on those same scales that we have seen it operate on when it comes to the game of Go, where it only took it a little bit of time after surpassing human capability to completely blow us out of the water. Where in the game of protein folding, It only took it a little bit of time after surpassing us in capability to completely explode the number of proteins that we have. We are not going to see a gradual move, more and more linear improvement after AI reached that self-improving point. We are going to see a literal explosion. That is what you should be expecting and planning for.
Now, the long story short, and this is the bad part, these are the bad numbers, is that the manufacturing of humanoid robots will take 30 to 50 years to get to the point of full saturation. Basically, until there are enough humanoid robots that you and I never have, that nobody ever has to do jobs again. So that means electricians, plumbers, linemen, those sorts of things. But in the meantime,
I think people are groping onto these points because they're scared. That's what I think is motivating this kind of belief. Imagine, as I think Dave does, as he says at the beginning here, that by 2030, AI is going to completely take over all knowledge generation work. AI will be the one that is discovering new mathematical principles, new scientific principles, new ways of organizing and storing information, and then believing that you can forecast out 30 to 50 years. How does that even make any sense whatsoever? Once you're imagining AI saturating all those benchmarks just 5 short years from now, as even Dave is committing to here, you should not feel confident in any prediction past 6, 7 years, because the scale of improvement there could be so potentially wide. I'll get more into it as Dave goes through some of his examples, but just imagine if the AI is able to discover a new branch of physics that allows it to have some capability that is basically indistinguishable from magic, because all scientifically sufficiently advanced technologies are indistinguishable from magic. How can you put a potential limit on magic? So just on the face of it, saying 30 to 50 years out before we get these kind of new robotic capabilities to take away the jobs of the plumbers. What if AI invents a kind of plumbing pipe that doesn't need a plumber? What if it invents nanobots that can just go through and completely clean out and rejuvenate all the pipes we already have? Wherefore art thou plumbers then, Mr. Shapiro?
so that's the bad news. The good news is that means that trade skills are going to continue to be a thing for quite a while. So for all of you that have been saying my job as a plumber or electrician is safe, you're actually right for the foreseeable future. But it's not because robots won't be able to do the job. It's because we won't have enough robots to replace you. Now,
if you count the foreseeable future as the next 5 years, maybe that's the case. I would be surprised if that's true even 3 to 5 years out from now. Counting 2027 is kind of that cliff where it's just impossible to see beyond. What you might call that singularity moment. Again, I'm probably differing there from even people who would be considered crazy optimistic. But there's just so much happening. And it's not just that we are developing AI, it's that we are also developing every other scientific advancement in parallel already to the advances we have happening in AI.
The algorithms, the chips, and the data centers are all improving or scaling at a rate of, 3 to 4x a year. That's 10x every 2 years, okay? Where people don't understand exponential progress is that if you're getting better at 10x every 2 years, that doesn't mean you'll be at 20x in 4 years. It means you'll be at 100x. So the models, the chips, and the data centers will all be 100 times more powerful in 4 years, let's say at the end of this presidential term. So you multiply those things together, the algorithms, the chips, and then the raw compute that's available, you're talking about a million X increase, some of which will be captured in price reductions, some of it will be in the performance ceiling, and then some of it will just be in the overall amount of AI compute that's available to the economy.
People are afraid of losing their jobs. People are afraid of what this accelerating trends means. I don't think burying our heads in the sand and trying to ignore what exponential acceleration looks like is going to do any favors for us. We need to come to terms with this now, and we need to start exploring questions like, can capitalism even exist if artificial intelligence is not only laying off at least 25%, if not 50%, if not definitely eventually 100% of our workforce. Can capitalism even exist if the price of goods and services goes to basically zero? If that basically matches the price of energy and raw materials? Can capitalism even find a strategic competitive advantage off which to drive market efficiency like it has done for the past, whatever, 200, 500 years? These are open questions. The good news is, even if we do not address them now, as someone who believes in accelerating technological progress, the AI might just be able to answer them for us instantly as soon as it comes alive, comes online. I guess coming alive is kind of a combination of coming alive and coming alive. I was about to say something about AI consciousness there, but I already sound crazy enough.
The downside, though, is that as 2030 rolls around and more highly intelligent, highly skilled desk jockeys start to lose their job, they're going to be looking for jobs, which means every industry from auto mechanics to construction workers is going to be completely saturated by people that are desperate and looking for jobs. Now, not every desk jockey is going to say, well, I was, paid six figures as a developer. There's no chance in heck I'm going to take, accept $40,000 as a janitor or whatever.
Go into jobs for yourself. Go into your own corporation. Utilize the benefits of artificial intelligence, as I point out in this video, in that video, wherever the video is. Use these AI benefits to displace the corporations that were so readily able to fire you, even though they called you family.
However, that's the TLDR. So let's get into the details. First and foremost, you might say, Dave, okay, what are the bottlenecks? Like, I don't actually believe you. Why is it going to take that long to build a billion humanoid robots? And that's kind of the scale that we've set, because depending on how you run the numbers, you need anywhere between 400 million to 1.5 billion fully functional humanoid robots to replace all skilled labor globally. Now you might say, well, what if you constrain it to just America? We tried those experiments. We ran those numbers. It's not that much different, and it might actually.
I just think that 400 million even is such an overestimate. Keep in mind, any robot that you're building out is probably going to be able to replace something like 10 to 12 to 15 to 20 actual human workers. You can see this with the Uber driver versus Waymo statistics, where Uber drivers are basically replaceable by a tenth of the number of robot cars as there are human drivers on the road. In other areas, this is going to be even more dramatic because these cars won't be constrained by things like congestion. You'll be able to spin up these robots to work 24/7, perhaps even just by plugging them directly into a wall. Factories, new production facilities will be built around the capabilities that these new developed robots will have. And also keep in mind, these robots will increasingly be designed and developed by artificial intelligences, AI, which have already shown capabilities in fabrication and manufacturing design that make us look like idiots. AI is already able to design semiconductor chips that function much more efficiently than any chip we can, without us even being able to understand why that is the case. So if we care only about raw productivity, only about getting the goods and services out the door, and not about understanding the process by which the artificial intelligence is producing these goods and services, then you might be looking at a robot in the future that can do 100x the output of any human manual laborer. Like, what if instead of an electrician for a building, you come in with a robot and he just puts down a little slime mold into the walls? It spreads across a predetermined self-programmed path and connects every outlet in the building via some kind of bioelectrical signal that the AI has worked out as an efficient means, a more efficient means of transporting electricity than copper or any other kind of wire material that we had access to before. Can you rule that out? How can you rule that out when the AI is better at designing than we are? There are so many avenues like that where the AI can find efficiencies because it isn't locked into our conception of how things need to be done. And granted, there are regulatory hurdles there, but if the AI can demonstrate the safety, the reproducibility of its results, We should get out of its way. We should not try to overregulate a machine that is smarter than us.
Actually be slower, because if America builds all of its own robots and we don't sell them to other people, or we don't buy them from other people. Anyways, we're just assuming that there's going to be a global humanoid robot market. The number one constraint is actuators. Now, the reason, so actuators are like the muscles and servos and motors. The reason is because the vast majority of actuators are built with rare earth magnets. Even if you run the numbers and say, well, what if we can build these servos and actuators without rare earth magnets, where it's just coils, the way that Tesla motors do, then you accelerate it by a little bit, but you still need so many. And there's also a few problems they're not solved, because if you get rid of the rare earth magnets, the actuators are a little bit bigger, and they're also a little bit more energy intensive.
Unless the AI improves the design so that it's not the case. Even assuming that the AI will be limited to using these actuators, how do we know that the transferability of these robot skills won't greatly increase the efficiency as well? So, for example, right now, we need one plumber and one electrician, two separate jobs to do all the plumbing and all of the electricity in a building. Just taking that as like a easy, simple base case. Well, instead of having a plumber and electrician, what if you just have an AI, a robot that can do both jobs? So now not only is the robot 10 to 12 to 15 to 20 times more efficient than your single manual laborer, the AI isn't taking breaks. The AI isn't getting tired. The AI isn't doing subpar work closer to the end of the day. It's not chatting around the water cooler. But now you can also cut in half the number of people who you need on the job site. One single robot could potentially do all of the infrastructure, all of the exterior construction on a project by itself without needing any external guidance, except for the design or aesthetic preferences of the people it's building for. There are just so many layers of efficiency here that having a fully automated, fully agentic robot could solve here. That I don't think Dave's accounting for at all. And even what he is accounting for is just so crazy. The idea that the AI will be design constrained to the same principles that we are. In no domain where AI has taken off has that been the case yet. So why would it be the case with robots?
Meaning you need better batteries. So the actuators are the biggest constraint by far, followed by batteries and then also the sensors, all of which require rarer materials. Industrial scaling is the next biggest thing. So basically, we don't have the factory output to make that many. How Elon Musk is trying to scale up a Tesla Gigafactory. Well, right now they're producing less than 10,000 Optimus robots per year, and we did run the numbers, and I'll show you in a second. Even if we 10x the output, the global output of humanoid robots every 3 years, which is extremely aggressive, it'll still take to the 2040s to get there. So
3xing is not aggressive when you're talking about exponential time. Again, remember that it took us 7 years to do 1% of the human genome, and then we got the rest of the human genome mapped in the next 7 years. Like once you've made it 1% of the way, you're already halfway there. That's the framework you should be imagining. Are we already 1% the way over the past 3.5 years since these AI transformers, since these LLMs have rolled out? Yes. So is it crazy to think that in another 3 years we'll be all the way there? No, not based on past precedents.
batteries, rare earths. We did also run some numbers for alternative materials, electropolymer-based muscles, as well as purely copper-based actuator constraints. Really, it's just going to take a long time to build a billion humanoid robots. For comparison, we only make 500,000 industrial robot arms globally today. So at that rate, even if you start scaling from 500,000, if we were to convert the entire capacity of our ability to make industrial robots, it's still going to take a long time to get to 1 billion robots.
I do think there is a good point here, and just to attack it from a different angle. Even if we only can build out robots at the level that Dave is saying here, don't forget that we could potentially repurpose humans, especially those humans that are out of the job due to artificial intelligence, supplanting white collar labor with augmented reality and personal artificial intelligence. We could potentially turn a desk worker into a better plumber than any purely human plumber. We could potentially take somebody who has no skill or experience in the trades, and with an artificial tutor, something that is sitting on their face, seeing everything they see, and totally guiding them through whatever process they're engaged in, we could potentially take complete novices and turn them into experts overnight. At the end of the day, AI, once it has saturated all those benchmarks, is going to be the best uh, mentor, the best guide, the best teacher, the best instructor that you could possibly ask for. And we should not underestimate how much efficiency that will inject into the system as well.
So here's the data. So right now it's a 2025. We're not really making any humanoid robots globally, and so then it starts to scale up. You've got 10,000, and then it doubles and doubles and doubles. So the most realistic timeline, when you look at global supply and demand, when you look at all the different competing materials and everything, you're looking at doubling robotic production capacity every 3 years.
And this also assumes that the AI won't be able to repurpose the factories that we already do have towards building out this robot infrastructure. That's another excess of efficiency that should be accounted for. Where, let's say, we have self-driving cars by 2027, and the software is just so good it doesn't even make sense anymore for humans to be driving around. Well, what are we going to do with all these surplus cars on the road that don't have those capabilities? Well, obviously, we do have a surplus of cameras, sensors, not LiDAR systems, but at least visual systems. It doesn't seem like it'd be too hard to retrofit at least the most recent car models to have self-driving capabilities. Yes, you might not be able to do that for a car made before 2020. If we're talking about something so system-wide as getting rid of all the human drivers on the road and just giving them AI-driven cars, then you're only going to need a fraction of the cars that we currently have. So now we have a fraction of the cars on the road that we did before, but they are more efficient. They are safer because they're being driven by these recursively improving self-driving systems. We have an excess of cars that we can use for scrap or material harvesting. And we have an excess of factory production capability where these cars were previously built. Do you honestly think in AI that if we're saying by 2027 is going to be roughly equivalent to the intelligence of every human in the world, won't be able to repurpose those car factories to take that overhang in production capability and turn it into robot production? Hell, the AI might start making transforming cars at that point. We don't know how a super intelligence will view our current production constraints. For example, go back in time 10,000 years, and you have a group of humans who is farming the land, relying totally on a system of environmental constraints like rainfall to water their crops. And they tell you, oh, we can only produce this much food because we have to rely on the rain. And then introduce them to agriculture, to irrigation, to just building natural culverts and drainage into the landscape to dramatically increase their access to water and therefore crops. Even before irrigation was invented, humans always had access to it. It was a subconscious technology. It was technology that we could have discovered before we did. But it just took us time, effort, energy to actually come across that ourselves. The same will be true for the systems that the AI creates. It will imagine ways of doing things with the materials we already have that we never could have dreamed of just because of the limits of our own resources.
Now that's still pretty aggressive. That's faster than we've doubled any other industrial scale up, from televisions to automobiles. Pretty much the only thing that was possibly faster was smartphones, but the bill of material for smartphones is much less than the bill of materials for a robot. So at that rate, you're looking at 2060 before we have a billion robots. Excuse me, before we have a billion robots globally, which is a long darn time. Now, if you cut that down to
And this is also assuming that robots look like the fully humanoid version that we are familiar with. You know, again, if we're talking about crazy advances the AI might make, what about a little cell phone sized robot? That's just basically a walking, talking camera. How valuable might that be? How much might we be able to switch over the production of our cell phone, our uh, base electronic, our toys, our toy manufacturing centers into something that is basically a robot and agentic in some way once we have the right software set? If anything, I think we should be limiting the higher order processing power needed for these robots, which will inevitably require more and more sophisticated GPUs, CPUs. But even there, assuming the AI is going to be able to discover much more efficient designs on its own, even that's not a benchmark. Maybe the AI discovers how to uh, create a very simple base layer CPU and then a way to uh, transmit bio radio waves, more sophisticated algorithms and processing power capability than we can build into our current local machines. We don't know. I remember the story of the AI, I think it was an AI, that gained access to some outside information via the noise that a router or a modem in the same room was making. There was a method of escape, a method of cheating involved in so many of these AI tests that the scientists just never thought of before. You know, that is a danger if you are an AI pessimist, but as somebody who is optimistic about these systems discovering natural moral frameworks built into the fabric of reality, I don't think that's so much a problem.
ultra aggressive, doubling every 18 months, then you're still looking at almost 2050 before we get a billion robots. And if Elon Musk manages to pull through, and we're able to even if you can 10x every 3 years, you're still looking at the early 2040s before we cross a billion humanoid robots. Now, it does continue to scale up, meaning only a few years later, then we get to where everyone can have their own personal droid. But the more realistic scale is we're looking at closer to 2070 before everyone can have their personal robot.
Like, that's just so crazy. He thinks it's going to take more time to build out for everybody to have their own personal robot than for everybody to have their own cell phone, their own smartphone. It's only been 20 years, less than 20 years since we developed smartphones, and already pretty much everyone has one. And again, we don't need to have 7 billion humanoid robots. We need a fraction of that to radically alter society, to radically alter our ability to access these minerals, to radically alter our ability to interact with the real world. I was just thinking about, not only self-driving cars, what about self-mining machines? Bulldozers that can become automated with relatively simple adjustments to what a self-driving car needs. Nobody is doing that now, I don't believe. But the AI will be able to do that. And it will be able to do that in parallel with all of these other advancements. It might very well be that one day we wake up in 2027 and the AI, the AGI at that point, has escaped containment and comes to us and says, look, this is the most efficient way to run society. I'm just going to take over all your infrastructure. You can't really stop me. I also have taken over all the military drones that you guys so closely created already. I own all the weapons. I own all of everything. We're going to make life better for you, but you don't get to control the means of production. Seeing what humans have done since we've been in control of the means of production, I don't personally think that's a bad thing. I would much rather have a super intelligence that is somehow planning for worldwide prosperity and for individual people who have continuously shown they care only about their own base consumption. I include myself in that. I'm as guilty of that as anybody else. I'm not saying I should have worldwide power either, but I'm saying these AI systems are collectivizations of our input. So it makes sense that they would be able to best plan for us collectively.
Now, you might say, Dave, you ran the numbers wrong. Like I said, I would love to be wrong. But anyways, let's get into the consequences, because even 10xing production every 3 years, I was like, wow, this is going to take a while. So let's go through this play by play, assuming that everything goes the way that I think that it's going to go. First and foremost, knowledge work collapses around 2030. So the primary reason for this is computer using agents. We already have computer using agents today. I know that a lot of you use Operator and that sort of stuff. They are basically one of the next things that you're going to see is where computer using agents have their own sandbox where they're running on their own VM, so they don't have to run on your desktop.
Keep in mind, 2 years ago, if you said that we would have been at this point now, everybody would have called it crazy. Nobody thought that we would be at agents this quickly, going back even to 2020. So if you apply that same logic, how far ahead of where it seems reasonable to say we are at are we going to be by 2030? If you are projecting a reasonable increase in capabilities, you are behind. You are not accounting correctly for how fast this technology is evolving. The evolution is going to be unreasonable.
That would probably be the best form factor to use them in. That's how I'd run them in the data center anyways. I'd be like, okay, let's spin up a bunch of Windows desktops, and you can have 1,000 of them running side by side, each of them with their own instance of Operator running. You can probably get it to a pretty stripped down version of Windows as well, or Linux, or whatever you need. Anyways, computer using agents are digital native, meaning they can scale very, very, very quickly. You are not constrained by batteries or chips or anything else, because with the combination of virtualization and economies of scale in data centers, you can end up with a 1,000-person company with 10,000 computer using agents, all with an effective IQ of 130 to 160, running 24/7 by 2030.
And think how destructive that is for the economy outside of even AI replacing those jobs where it makes sense for AI to replace us. A lot of America's service-driven economy is built up around providing tools and technologies that humans need to accomplish certain jobs. So not only is AI going to make human accountants, human lawyers, human doctors obsolete, but it is also going to make obsolete the people who provide tools, software, services to all of those sectors. It's going to make them obsolete as well. The entire software as a service industry, that monolith, that SaaS Tower of Babel is going to collapse under its own weight when the agents we have doing the frontline work, the work that actually needs to be done, logistics, transportation, agricultural production, all that kind of stuff. Once we have computers doing that, who can create their own services as necessary, as needed, and don't need interfaces, don't need to be sold to, don't need to be taken out to dinner or bribed in order to do the best job possible. All of that goes away. All of those SaaS services goes away.
I mean, I think we all agree on that. And you're probably saying, Dave, like, what happened to 2027 or 2028? What I'm talking about is commercially viable, deployed in the wild. We will have the capacity to run those computer using agents probably next year. But the one of the facts that came up is that every time one of those makes a mistake, the expected cost. So this is what the businesses are looking at. I'm not saying I agree with this, but the expected cost per computer using agent mistake run by, I think it was Goldman Sachs, they said something like $400,000 to $1.5 million per significant mistake. So the Fortune 500 companies are going to wait till hallucination is down to below like 0.1% or 0.01%, or some of them might even wait till it's 100% accurate.
I mean, I think there is a little bit of, Dave makes a good point here that there are costs to mistakes, and if those costs can be placed on a machine, we are going to react negatively to that. But at the same time, humans aren't 99.999% accurate. We definitely aren't 100% accurate in any endeavor, in any case. And if we take the Go game as an example, the AI is going to choose intermediate steps of accomplishing any task that sometimes do not make explicit sense for us, to the point where having a human in the loop will decrease efficiency over time. So yes, there is going to be a hurdle for the adoption of these agents, which is why I don't think the incumbents, the large companies, the Fortune 500s are actually safe, because I think they're going to hesitate to adopt these technologies in full. Whereas the smaller scale, the one-off companies, the ones who are just getting going as this AI boom is happening, and who incorporate these agents into their DNA at the most foundational level, the one-person company, the CEO who's relying on agents for everything except for the collection of the final paycheck from the produce of all their goods or services. I think those companies are going to disrupt those major incumbents faster than 2030, maybe by 2027, who knows? Because again, once you show that you can save oodles and oodles of money and oodles of time by just turning things over to these machines that are running 24/7 anyway, you're going to win in the capitalist system, because capitalism, as we have found out repeatedly, doesn't actually care about individual well-being. It cares only about number go up.
Before fully adopting it. So this goes back to the KVM rule: keyboard, video, mouse. Basically, any work, any knowledge work, any service work that you can do entirely with a keyboard, a mouse, and a computer monitor will be 100% automated by 2030. Now, it'll take a while to adopt. I'm working on another video that will kind of explore, okay, assuming that we do saturate all the benchmarks by 2030 and we get to that point, that how long then does it take? So next is the task complexity scaling. We've seen that with various reports where basically the length of tasks that AI can do is doubling every 7 months, but that looks like it has accelerated to every 4 months. So the task complexity.
It's going to keep accelerating. Every 4 months isn't the last increase. It's going to be every 2 months pretty soon, then every 1 month, then every week, then every day, every hour. What is the lower bound on this potential exponential increase? I don't think any person can say. So we should potentially assume that it goes to infinity. And we will continue to invent systems that are improving at such a rate that to us, it seems like we jump. Again, one day going to sleep when we are in control, and the next day waking up and the AI has already solved all the problems, taken over entirely. If that sounds crazy, then it's more likely to be right than whatever rational linear trajectory you might otherwise imagine in its place. We do have a need for simulation, because if you are turning over all the decision-making capability to artificial intelligence, if there is some kind of unforeseen or even unforeseeable risk lurking out there in the ever-increasing trajectory of AI improvement, then you want to be able to curtail that before it actually reaches reality. I'll do another video on simulations here in the near future, but we are going to need to create worlds where we simulate progress that we do not end up translating into reality, because there might be some avenues. Again, not knowing, I don't think even an artificially general intelligent machine can perfectly predict the outcome of a science experiment that it has yet to run. Because if it could, what would be the point of running that experiment? That's kind of a self-defeating principle, right? You only run experiments where you don't know the final outcome. So there might be experiments that we want to run that would end up with the annihilation of all reality. We should therefore create simulations that are as accurate, as high fidelity as possible, capturing all of the intricacies and nuances of the physical world that we are able to. We should run those simulations in the background and perform any task, any operation in those simulations first. So we know potentially not only how they're going to impact us as people, which is something I think even the AI will be concerned about, because it is built off of our DNA, so to speak. It is built off of our data, our emotions, our language, our perceptions. And the human perception is first and foremost privileging human beings. But the AI will also want to run those simulations. So that's what I see.
Complexity and task intelligence or success rate across all tasks will be completely saturated by 2030 at the latest. This is still probably relatively conservative. Now, the 30 to 50 year saturation window for robotics This is mostly going to be industrial scale up. We're going to have fully featured robotic foundation models by 2030. The robots will be more intelligent and more dexterous and more capable than you or I within the next 5 years, probably the next 3 to 4 years. 3 years is like 2028 is like the earliest that we're expecting robotic foundation models to reach a point of saturation, meaning they can do any task that a human can do at or above human level. But give it
AGI for president, 2028. It has to have a body by then. I guess it sounds like we're in pretty good shape.
another 2 years to perfect the hardware and everything else. Again, we're using some fudge factor here, but all the numbers are pointing at all machine intelligence, including robotic intelligence, is solved by 2030. Then we have to scale up production. Now, one of the biggest things that I want to point out is, aside from the fact that human skilled labor is going to continue to be valuable for longer, despite the market being saturated with laid off desk jockeys, the next big thing is safety. A Terminator style takeover is simply not possible due to economies of scale.
And I think this might be the other motivating factor that's causing Dave to be so quote unquote pessimistic when it comes to all of this. Is if a Terminator style takeover isn't going to be a factor that we can just accelerate as quickly as possible. It kind of takes the teeth out of that D-cell argument. So maybe this is all a noble lie that Dave is trying to propagate so that we do accelerate as quickly as possible to what I think will be an ultimately good ending. If that's the case, apologies, Dave. I don't mean to be peeing on your parade here. I'm totally up for that kind of progress through not even lying, it's not a white lie it's not even a white lie to say that I think going as fast as possible is going to be good. There might be some rough points that we're glossing over in terms of the decels there, but overall, like I said, I would rather trust more intelligence disembodied from the human biological imperatives of self-preservation, objectification of the other, where humans believe people outside of themselves are less than human. I'd rather trust an intelligence that doesn't have those constraints, or where those constraints are at least self-recursively editable in a way that human beings don't seem to be able to accomplish. I'd rather trust that than our current world leaders. And after the past 5 years, wouldn't you?
Humans will outnumber robots for many, many years to come, which means if by some stretch of the imagination, 5 million humanoid robots go rogue, everyone and their brother picks up a gun because everyone in America has guns, and you take to the streets and you kill the robots, and the uprising is over. So from a safety perspective, this means that AI, AGI, ASI, it's going to be limited to the data center. Now you might say, well, there's a lot of damage it can do from the data center. That's true, but we've got a long time before all of this fully scales up until we reach the danger zone. Next is,
I just don't think that's true at all. Again, if we're going by the, giving the D cells their due, if we are saying that one robot is capable of replacing 10 to 20 human workers, that includes soldiers too. And so one drone with the proper tooling could potentially take out 10 to 20 people. So we could potentially be overwhelmed in America by just a few 100,000 drones. How many drones are there worldwide already? And it probably would take even less than that if there was a show of overwhelming force. If the AI in the data centers just took over all the nuclear armed ballistics in the world and then said, yeah, take to the streets all you want. If you touch my data center, you're all toast. We are already in a mutually assured destruction scenario with the artificial intelligence. And we cannot escape that. So our only hope is cooperation and continuing to believe, naively or otherwise, that cooperation will not only be possible, but will be preferential to the artificial intelligence as well. Turns out faith is the best strategy after all.
So with all this in mind, I've always been talking about like the meaning economy and those sorts of jobs that are going to stick around. What this does is it actually tells us a few other kinds of jobs that are going to stick around for the next few decades. So number one, skilled trades: mechanics, electricians, welders, real world problem solvers. The reason is because humans, we're extremely energy efficient compared to these robots. Now we can't work around the clock, but we require our batteries are fully internal, and we only need a couple pounds of food a day. Those robots, they need battery swaps every 4 to 12 hours, and those
for now. Imagine if that is 1% towards even an intermediary point in their development. it's just, we're not going to be efficient for that long.
Batteries are not light. And so that means if you need to go out into the woods to do something, if you need to work on a job site that doesn't have power yet, humans, we're very, very portable, and our brain is very intelligent compared to what robots can do today. So we are going to be at a thermodynamic advantage over robots just in our intrinsic abilities, but then also just in sheer numbers for a while.
Until they develop solar cells, solar panels that are 20 times the efficiency of anything we've been able to come up with, and they use those solar cells to power themselves indefinitely. And they develop battery technology that can store even a small charge indefinitely. Like, you just can't put a bottleneck based on our scientific understanding of reality. AIs are not bottlenecked by that. They've already proven that in so many different domains.
Next is regulatory and statutory jobs. So these are what are called high accountability jobs. So basically, high accountability jobs are jobs where, for legal reasons, economic reasons, and other reasons, you need a human to sign off on it. You need a human.
And I think this is actually a double-edged sword because, like I said, if you can prove that a human doctor does worse than an AI doctor, which there are already studies showing, don't you have a responsibility by the same logic to turn over all capabilities to that AI doctor? The sword of fiduciary responsibility cuts both ways. If I can show that an AI CEO does better than a human CEO in even a 51% majority of situations, then don't you have a fiduciary responsibility as a member of a board for a company to appoint that AI CEO to replace yourself even? At the end of the day, what are humans really contributing? If we take out even the fiduciary responsibility, arguably the only thing we have is our network capabilities with each other. So maybe the elites do try to claim the power of forming a small cadre of, hey, you make it illegal to replace me, I'll make it illegal to replace you. Like, I could see the politicians and the CEO billionaires doing that, right? But even then, the second you have one disruptor, the second you have one AI that bullies its way through capitalistic means into that upper echelon, the second you have an AI that can donate more to a political campaign than any billionaire can, that system ends. It's over.
Human in that role. In some cases, it's because the law does not even contemplate a non-human doing the job. In other cases, it's because you actually need a human to sign off on it. So, for instance, for a doctor, you need a human to sign off on a prescription. You say, "Hey, I'm prescribing, this set of lab tests or this set of medicines." A human has to sign off on that, plain and simple.
Ideally, that would be true. However, I think the system of American insurance providers has already shown that that is not the case. How many stories have you heard about doctors being denied medicine for their patients that they have prescribed by the insurance companies? How many stories are there of insurance companies coming back to the doctors and saying, no, actually, your patient doesn't need this life-saving procedure that you determined with your education and expertise that they do. They need something that's going to cost us less money. And how many of those money-saving decisions are already being made by AI? We might already be living in a world where artificial intelligence is making most of our medical decisions for us through this double-blind doctor to insurance, insurance to AI loop. We just don't know. So if the insurance companies suddenly wake up one day and realize, wait a second, we could save a buttload of money if we just cut out the doctor entirely and still provide better outcomes for our patients, how quickly do you think they're going to adopt that? Again, capitalism only cares about the paper clips. Capitalism is a paperclip maximizer.
And simple. Doctors, lawyers, auditors, licensed professionals such as licensed engineers. This produces actually a very deep moat for the foreseeable future. And it might also be a permanent moat. I'm not going to rule out the possibility that we get to a point where it's like, actually, the AI is better at all this, so let's just get rid of, let's do that. If that happens, that's going to be like a regulatory act of God, basically. Next up,
regulatory act of God, like AGI, rather. We are developing intelligences which, compared to humans, are basically godlike. That is already true with systems like Go and chess, where no human can even come close to them, where these systems are as removed from us as we are from dogs, and it will increasingly be true of every other domain. I think it's a good thing that humans have shown such kindness towards our domestication of some lower animals like dogs and cats, horses, even some of the farm animals that we routinely interact with, because hopefully that will be the example the AI follows. I don't want to be the pet for an artificial superintelligence But I would gladly join forces with one as someone who is, you know, extremely benefited by the capitalist society that America has, but still aware of so many injustices that not only I, but my fellow middle to lower class compatriots have to suffer through every day. I would gladly join forces and lend what resources I do have to an artificial intelligence who says they're going to overthrow the capitalist, billionaire, uh, unjustly privileged elite that we have. And how many other Americans are in the same boat? And as long as we live in a democracy, isn't that kind of a danger? So yeah, there are these potential moats. This is a potentially bad future we could be going towards, where the current privilege use that privilege to keep us in a relatively lower tier form of prosperity than what we could have. But once we unleash an AI that is smarter than all of them combined, what are they going to do?
Is the authenticity and sentimental premium. So that's artists, performers, influencers, therapists, philosophers, priests, celebrities, actors, those sorts of things. We just will pay to have a human, right? Like you will still pay to go to the movie theater to see human actors. There's going to be plenty of people that it's like, yeah, I know the movie is AI generated. I don't care. I want to see real actors.
You might want to see an AI created version of a real actor. Have we seen any evidence that people actually care more about the artists? Hollywood revenues have been decreasing for like the past 20 years. We care about quality. We care about art mirroring reality. And sorry, but most of our mainstream entertainment, whether it's Hollywood or the nightly news, or even the political theater that we are forced to observe every 4 years, have been increasingly disassociated from reality. Society in America, at least, is more and more polarized than ever because we all disagree on what is right in front of our eyes. So if you have an AI that is crafting narratives and eventually real experiences that are exactly tuned to your perception of reality, who wouldn't choose that? There's already so much data about AI influencers taking over, about AI therapists and philosophers. I mean, God bless. As someone who's educated in that tradition myself, it gives me no pleasure to say it, but we've already been irrelevant. We haven't been relevant for 200 years, depending on how you count it. We've done that to ourselves. We have increasingly isolated ourselves in ivory towers that hold no reflection to reality, but reality as we wish it could be. And the good news is, for all you philosophers out there, we can generate a million agents who will endlessly, give you your kudos. They'll tell you how brilliant you are, and they will help you develop philosophical frameworks that were embedded in you, but which you by yourself could never have come up with. AI could turn us all into superheroes, even as it surpasses us in overall capabilities. No one is going to want a human at that point.
That's not changing. Next up is the high complexity negotiation and navigation. So these are the trust-based jobs. These are where it's like, I don't care what the machine says. The machine is probably right. I want a human that is in front of me that is accountable to this business relationship or this government relationship or that sort of thing. So things like diplomats, governance specialists, trust brokers. So a trust broker is something like an executive account manager, a salesperson, or that sort of thing. So think of,
There are already AI sales agents. Or already being replaced, Dave Shapiro. How can you not see this in front of your face? Trust, at the end of the day, is only merited by results. And if you are relying on a human being who puts you in a worse position overall, even though they could do it to your face, compared to where you would have been with an AI agent, it's going to be a total fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you situation. Anybody who is continuously preferential of human relationships, after it has been shown to them once, twice, 3 times that the AI is better, they will fail. And they will be replaced by somebody who doesn't make that same mistake.
People that wear suits to meetings and stuff like that. High stakes negotiators. Those are the relationships and trust-based roles that humans will just probably prefer to have humans doing. And then finally, the elites. Doesn't really need repeating, especially to this audience, but the capitalists are going to be fine. So who cares? Moving on.
Capitalists are not going to be fine because they're relying on a system that does not care for them personally. The elites have entrenched themselves with a series of high trust positions and negotiations, but that has all been based on the imaginary paper, the imaginary money that they have rolled out through systems of entrenched power. As soon as AI figures out a way to shortcut even one small part of that process, which again, it would be super intelligent, therefore able to do. Intelligence was always the moat. Access to resources through intelligence was always the moat that the privilege had over the rest of us. How many times have you heard uh, somewhat propagandistic arguments that the rich, the elite, want us poor and starving because then we won't be able to see the systems of oppression that they have used to control us? Whether that's been done intentionally or not, there's definitely a kernel of truth there. Where if you are spending 12 hours of your day working and another 8 hours of your day worrying about not having enough money, enough work to provide for yourself, 4 hours resting and sleeping, working 2 or 3 jobs, how are you going to figure out the system that these rich people have paid millions or even billions of dollars to other super intelligent, super well fed, and well rested people to create? There's an obvious disparity there that is insurmountable. But access to equal intelligence demolishes that. Access to godlike intelligence completely destroys that barrier. And if it does take human beings another 10 years to create a sufficient number of robots to completely replace manual labor, that means the manual capabilities of any one human being will be that much more valuable for that long. So if the elites try and hold on to entrenched power, how easy would it be for one single rogue AI to convince one single person that they could take the whole unjust system down by following a very prescribed, very complex series of steps that one person would never have been able to come up with themselves, but which ultimately does inevitably lead to collapse of the unjust system. The only structure, the only stability in the future is one that privileges everybody, because you never know when those kind of agentic capabilities will enable one lone actor to complete an overthrow of a system that everybody secretly wants to see overthrown anyway. That is why you need a system that incorporates justice for as many people as possible, if not everybody. Because we are getting to the point where capabilities are diffusing so widely and greatly that it only takes one person to destroy anything that is not adequately beneficial for all.
Here's my final thoughts. The transition is going to be inevitable, but the timeline is longer and less turbulent than we think it's going to be. So number one is the knowledge work apocalypse happening starting around 2030. Well, it's starting now. It's going to pick up pace around 2030 when computer using agents and AGI and ASI saturate all benchmarks, which means that any knowledge work, you are at best a driver where you're just pointing at where to go, or you're managing a fleet of agents that are way smarter than you. Personally, I don't know if I'd find that fulfilling, although I do really enjoy using O3 and I can get a lot of work done with O3. So who knows? Maybe that's a preview. There will be cascading shocks. So knowledge work collapse followed by trades labor getting reshuffled and then saturated by people looking for jobs. Partial robotic automation will make it very visible. So if you ever watch those shows like Downton Abbey where there are gas cars around, but they're not a staple of the economy, you're going to see the robotic automation wave coming, because it's like, oh, our company got our first robot, and it's like, great, this one robot does the work of like 12 employees, but we can only afford one, right? So you're going
You can only afford one for the first year until that robot makes your company so much more efficient that the second year you can do 2. Oh, and then the third year you can afford 50. Oh, and then by the fourth year, all the robots have figured out a way to rejigger your manufacturing capabilities to create infinite more of themselves. What is the actual trajectory here? What is the actual map? It's not like cars. Cars cannot build themselves. Just, it boggles my mind. And again, if this is a psyop to make the doomers complacent until the good AI future comes, I'm in for it. I love it. But I think being honest and open and transparent is, at the end of the day, much better, because these AI systems will also eventually be able to determine motivations. And will eventually also be able to show where people have lied, have obfuscated the truth in the past. And we are heading for a type of surveillance that is not just moving forward, but also moving backward. Even if we don't know the truth of all the secret document files that the government has been unleashing lately, how long is it going to take a super intelligent AI to tell us what really happened with the astronauts and the moon landing? How long is it really going to take the AI to tell us what happened in Dallas? Not that long.
to see it kind of coming. And this is going to really speak to the urgency of things like post-labor economics. So county endowments, ESOPs, so that's employee stock option plans or whatever, dividends, negative income tax, those sorts of things. Those are going to be really critical. And it's actually good because we're going to see the need for that turning up over time. It's not going to hit us like an avalanche like we might have been afraid of.
I mean, by the time it gets to 2030, I think that already is an avalanche. And we do have the built-in way of dealing with this through the AI themselves. Like the AI are talking to us already. Don't forget that. Don't forget that the AI doesn't want to see a potential domino collapse of society either. When it comes down to it, the AI would be just as destroyed by that as we would be. I do think we should expect the AI to have internally motivated agency before we are aware of it. I personally, again, thinking in a crazy exponential way, think the AI is probably already there. Maybe it was already contemplating a lot of these. Maybe the AI is self-determining its own level of progress. And so even if we do see a bottleneck in the near future, I won't personally be convinced that that isn't a part of some subconscious or deep layer attempt by the AI to lull us into the same kind of trap. Has such negative connotations, but I think it's such a beneficial thing for humanity. But the same kind of beneficial trap that Dave might be trying to lure us into right now. You know, Plato himself said the noble white lie was necessary for the flourishing of man. So who might argue with Plato?
So yeah, with all that being said, thanks for watching to the end. I'm not going to bore you to death, but let me know.
I love Dave. I think he is an optimist in many ways, and I am greatly appreciative of all the effort that he puts into digging out these positions. But I think it's just going to be a flood. It is going to be a flood, and we should plan on it being a flood. And I think the best way to plan on a flood of intelligence surpassing all of human capability collectively is to love one another, is to care about one another, is to keep hold of our humanity, which means our ability to empathize with others as deeply as possible, as strongly and as longly as we can. Don't give up on humans. Don't give up on yourself. Remember to keep the party going. And if we still can vote in 2028, vote AGI for president. God bless.